morning. It is almost 7 a.m. my time. So we're a little creaky up here. This is me. I wrote the DevOps database reliability engineering book and the observability engineering book. If you want it for free, we tweet out the link on the Honeycomb Twitter account all the time. You can download it. I also have little wolfy stickers that you can decorate the wolf with, like flowing pink manes and hearts and stuff. So if you have the physical copy, it is the same one. Anyway, if you know anything about me, you probably know this, that my heart belongs to operations engineering. I have always kind of self-identified as someone who does ops, infrastructure, begrudgingly SRE, fine. Like, we do more than reliability, Christ. When DevOps happened, I was like, fine, I'll hop on this wagon too. But I care a lot about operating software effectively and efficiently. And like, this is everything that's interesting about software. This is everything that's hard about software is maintaining it. And you know, anyone can write some lines of code. Blah, blah, blah. Production's where they're really interesting. And I'm not going to rant about this, but I will just point out that the fact that the cost of writing software is effectively nothing compared to the cost of maintaining it. This has always been true, but it's been easy to overlook because it's been a little bit difficult to write code sometimes. I'll give you that. But the rise of ChatGPT is going to prove for once and for all to everyone that the hard part of software is not writing code, it's understanding your code and making it work. So it's an upside to the whole AI revolution. If you're writing code and it isn't in production yet, like, it may as well not even exist, which is why this talk was born out of pure rage when some asshole tweeted this. And I was like, no. Definitely got baited into writing this talk. I'm like, I don't have time to write another talk, but I can't not. Now, okay. To start with, software doesn't die. Methodologies don't die. Not like we should be so lucky that software would ever go away. It doesn't. And yes, DevOps is a philosophy, but like, methodologies are based in software and practices, there are still people out there who are checking their code into CVS. There are still people out there who are editing it in Vim on production. So software doesn't die. Obviously, this was like clickbait marketing. And before I go any farther, I kind of want to warn you that, like, you all, if you're the type of people to get really irritated about the discussions about what DevOps does and doesn't mean, you might just flat out hate this talk, because I'm talking about a lot of definitions. And I'm talking about definitions and terms that are a lot of them are kind of emerging, because I do feel like the thing that we really messed up with DevOps was the lack of clarity from the beginning. It was this, it was that, it was... we didn't get it right, and I feel like our industry, our discipline is maturing. We are learning things organizationally as well, in the same way that client server architecture gave rise to, like, service-oriented architecture and so forth. I feel like we're learning things about the boundaries between teams and the roles that teams should have. And I feel like this latest kind of batch of names is a really good positive step in the direction of having names mean things. So I'm going to try and support that effort. DevOps is dead is just a stupid thing to say. But the reason it got such a rise out of everyone, I think, is because there is a kernel of truth there, which is that the need for DevOps is not eternal. Developing software is eternal, always going to be with us. Operating that software is eternal. But DevOps, what happens when we have no more dev teams and no more ops teams to be collaborating together and, like, all the empathy and blah, 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 blah? What happens when we just don't have those anymore? And like, if you look over the long arc of software careers over the past, like, what, 50 years or whatever, it all started with engineers who wrote their code and owned their code in production. And then, like, stuff got really complicated and we had to specialize somehow. And one of the specialist lines that were drawn were between writing the code and running the code, which was in retrospect, a bad idea, a pretty bad idea. And after a few decades of that and of these teams getting entrenched and hating each other, DevOps emerges to like heal the breach and like remind people that they're supposed to be working together. But fundamentally, I think that is a rift that should never have been created. And I feel like if everything that's been happening in software over the past 5 to 7 years has been sort of a reunification, where everybody writes code and every engineer runs the code that they write. Yeah, well, no, never mind. I don't think I have enough time. And this is not just for like, purist reasons or whatever. It's because it's being driven by facts on the ground. Nothing changes for no reason. Things change because something made them change. And our systems are becoming, more and more complex. I say this every year, and it's still true. And increasingly, they can only really be effectively operated by the people who write them. It used to be that like the DevOps divide, the abstraction layer that we had was like, okay, it's a black box. Treat them like they're all black boxes. Now just glue them together. That's your architecture. But just like, okay, and vice versa. For the devs, it was just like, okay, your world is your IDE. You don't have to think or care about anything outside your IDE. You own in the IDE, we own in production. And that's how we stumbled along. But not only can they really only be effectively operated if you can, write code and change them and understand them now, you also, I think just as importantly, you can't do a good job of writing the code unless you're regularly on the receiving end of that whole feedback loop of, oops, it broke, oops, I'm in pain. So like, does this mean that operational skills are obsolete? And people like us who are expert in running these big systems we can just retire now? No, operational, it's getting harder and our expertise is more important than ever. But the landscape is shifting, like the way that these roles are composed is shifting. The level of abstraction that we're all working at is getting way higher. Like I sometimes joke that my ops teams all work for Amazon now. I mean, I started my career, literally getting paged on a pager in the middle of the night because my SQL.agni was down, so I had to call a cab, go down to the colo, and flip the power switch, right? And I'm old, but I'm not that old. Like, this shit has changed fast, right? We're going higher and higher up the level of abstraction, and everybody's writing code, and everybody's like, these are two really big trends that are both kind of converging. So operational expertise is not only is it still needed, it's now needed not just by half the world, it's needed by everyone, right? And I feel like one of the kind of side effects of this is that we're starting to decouple infrastructure from operations. Infrastructure, I think I have a slide about this later, so I'll skip that. But like platform engineering is one of the things that has kind of emerged from this realignment. You know how we used to have like back-end engineering teams and like front-end engineering teams? And like literally, I've got 5 lines of JavaScript to do, not my job. You notice I stopped engineering right when that started being true. Just saying. That's a joke. I would learn JavaScript enough to do a little bit, but I would not be good at it. Companies are shutting down their ops teams left and right, and the ones that aren't yet are looking for ways to do it. And we're increasingly able to pay other people. As we're moving up the stack, we are depending on each other more and more. But it's much more of a glue job between APIs and SDKs and services and everything. So all of this sounds awfully operationally, but it's not the same as saying that platform teams are ops teams, platform infrastructure sits below, and platform is what sits on top of infrastructure. It's not saying, I mean, in response to this bullshit, I don't think we're trying to do this bullshit. Like, that's not. They're both bullshit. But you have a platform engineering org increasingly, which encompasses your infrastructure needs. And infrastructure, the way I define infrastructure is this. It's a code you have to run in order to run or support the code that you want to run, which is your crown jewels, right? It's your repos. It's the code that makes you as a business. It's the reason that you exist. And the reason I think it's interesting and useful to think about separating these two, conceptually, is because, well, lots of reasons. Obviously, you care about one more than the other. You care about understand. Like, infrastructure should be so rock solid that you would almost take it for granted. They move at different paces. Infrastructure moves at the pace of Debian upgrades, right? And your code moves at the pace of, hopefully, many times a day, right? When it comes to instrumentation, black box monitoring metrics are great for infrastructure. Not good enough for your code. You really need instrumentation and observability, because you're going to be expected to understand that code deeply every day. Every time your customer complains, every time you have a feature to ship, every time. And so, like, that's sort of like that boundary there between the two is where platform kind of sneaks in and becomes like the next wave. We don't do infrastructure, we do platforms on top of the infrastructure. And one thing, this is a fact that it used to make me really angry, and I would argue against it. But it's actually true. Infrastructure is a cost center. You are here to write the code that defines your business, right? Your code is the reason that you're there. Infrastructure, you can be great at it. It can even be a competitive differentiator for you. But it's still a cost center, which means you definitionally want as little as possible. You want to spend as little. You want to spend as little of your money. You want to spend as little of your time. You want to spend as little of your brain on it as possible. There's always going to be some, but you don't want it to be too much. Because in business, you win when you can focus. The more that your attention is spread across a bunch of different priorities and projects, the more difficult that becomes. There's a reason big companies are, like big old container ships that take a long time to turn around. Their focus is spread so thinly. And I feel like we're renaming infra orgs. As much as I'm like, we are not just renaming. Yeah, a lot of teams are literally, they might not just be being renamed from SRE to platform, but they're inheriting many of their people, their legacy, their plans. It makes sense. We're renaming infra orgs to platform orgs as a signal that we're building less of our infrastructure than ever before at a much higher level of abstraction, which is a good thing. Usually money is a lot cheaper than engineering cycles is. And while that might be, for the moment, kind of a zero interest rate phenomenon, it's still true that this is one of the reasons platform engineering is such a high leverage place to sit, because you pay maybe tens of thousands of dollars to a vendor, but they have millions of dollars worth of engineers working on this. You know how many 5 engineers for 1 year costs $1 million? I feel like I feel like we are so out of practice as engineers and managers when it comes to really having to think about our work and our output in business terms, like money or even any units that are convertible to like other teams. And I'm actually, it sounds a little, okay, I'm not going to say I'm really excited about the downturn because people are hurting and everything, but it's a corrective that I think is long overdue, because I feel like if we are unable to communicate and think clearly about our value to, at the very top levels of the company, it's a reality that a lot of places, the CTO and VP of engineering are not really, they're seen as kind of junior members of the circle, because and a lot of times they're like, well, just trust me, and you have to just trust them. But like, if you could really communicate about your value, you could be a better partner to them. All right, I'm going off topic here. Platform teams, we're going to talk about platform organizations versus platform teams here. Platform organizations probably have a bunch of different teams under them, many of which will probably look very familiar to you from the days of old. SRE, deep subsystem teams, like for us, oh, you can't read that. All right, it says SRE, deep subsystem teams, quote unquote, pure platform teams, security, release engineering, developer tools, front-end developer experience. The deep subsystem teams is like, for us, we didn't write a database, we wrote a storage engine. Spent my whole career telling people never write a database, so I'm a little sheepish about it, but but like we have to have a team that's dedicated to our storage layer because it's what the company is built on. Anyway, where was I going with this? Right, most of these aren't terribly new or surprising. The one new entrant is these so-called like pure platform teams. I think that these are a genuinely new phenomenon, and I think they're really exciting. And one of the teams, like platform teams, are successful typically when they have like equal strength in operations, like real operations, like running and owning large complex systems, and software engineering. You really don't want either to dominate. And these people work together for a while and they can learn from each other and they can both become much more generalist and everything. But like you really, and I hate to say it, but like there's no place for junior engineers in platform engineering teams right now. There's almost no room for senior engineers. Like it's almost a staff plus kind of team in most situations, I think. I'm not going to talk about that unless I have extra time. But one of the things that platform teams are best at, because of their history, is running less software. Surprisingly hard to do. This is, any asshole can spin up a bunch of AWS resources. It takes a real senior engineer to know how to use less software, which is a really, really powerful thing to do. Software equals surface area equals things you have to maintain, moving components. The less software you can run and get the job done, the better. Platform engineering teams are great at this. Platform teams, the way that they are different is that they are product engineering teams with an infrastructure specialist. And okay, so like, how is this different from SRE? Like, doesn't SRE build architecture too? Isn't this just rebranding ops teams? Lots of people would say so, which is why we have so many memes about it. But I would disagree. In fact, I have a handy dandy little like yes, no, true, false tip for you to tell whether or not your quote unquote platform team is really a platform team by my definition or not, which is this team responsible for SLOs, service uptime, and a reliable customer experience? If no, you might have a platform team. If yes, you do not have a platform team. Because platform teams are not responsible for customer experience. They're responsible for developer productivity. They're responsible for creating that thin layer of infrastructure that empowers software engineers to own their own code in production. So like, SREs and product engineering teams should measure themselves based on the SLOs and customer experience. And what should platform teams measure themselves on? Well, it depends on the team, but like how quickly can a team spin up a new service and self-serve? Another thing that they're typically great at is like picking a vendor and then creating like a shared library that creates a common interface for everyone to use, or that gives you a bunch of helper stuff for free, or like, creating a golden path of supported components and then making sure that everything there, that the right thing is easy to do and the hard thing and the wrong thing is hard to do. Platform teams succeed when developers can easily choose good defaults, self-serve their infra, and own their code in production. Your customer, if you're a platform team, is your developers, which is, and the things I was saying about what a high leverage team this is, and how, I thought that was a countdown, but I guess it's a clock. Now I have no idea how much time I have. 10 minutes. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, your platform team, lots of leverage. Their job is to take all of these products and craft this architecture, blah blah blah. What I'm trying to say is, if your platform team spends a lot of time writing software, something has gone very wrong. Because they don't have the time to be a product engineering team. They don't have, and sometimes what will happen is like, a project will get spun up or spec'd out. Like, I think that Envoy from Lyft, Istio, yeah, started out this way. It was like, got spun up. They got something that did the job, and then it gets turned over. Once it's going to be a real long-lived software engineering product that needs ownership, you make sure it has a team to do that. Because if you're focusing on developer experience and all of this architecture stuff, you could probably devote 20% of your time to actually writing software. But it's very much of the nature of, I'm going to study this problem for 3 weeks and then write 5 lines of code, but those 5 lines of code are going to save us $1 million, right? It's not like I'm going to spend all that time writing software. It's very much, measure 5 times and cut once. Run less software. I have this sticker, actually. I think I brought it with me. Run less software. DevOps, in a lot of ways, has been about automation. It's about managing infrastructure. Platform is about not having infrastructure to run. Platform teams really kind of sit uniquely between these two tectonic plates of the infrastructure code and the business side, which are each moving at these very different speeds, allowing other infrastructures in the best situation to completely abstract their infrastructure away. You guys know Abby Bankser? So she has this. I just found out what she's working on the other day, and it's like I'm like. Literally in my post in platform engineering, there was a paragraph that I was talking about that, and I didn't know it. But the thing that she's writing is, okay, so your platform team gets all these requests from people, spin me up a service, or like, I need admin permissions in Grafana. And the only place that they really communicate with the rest of the team, the queue, if you will, is the repo. So, they can create a way for software engineers to self-serve, spin up a service and everything. But those engineers still have to write a bunch of Terraform, maybe do some CloudFormation, check all this stuff in. And that's a lot to ask of someone, right? Platform teams are making this easier, but it's still a lot to ask. And the thing that Abby and her team are working on is an API for platform teams. It's like Rails for Ruby. So you would create an internal API endpoint and be like, here's how you spin up a new service. Or if you're getting a lot of requests for admin access, you create an endpoint. So it's like, here, hit this API request and it'll check to make sure that you're in the right Google group where you have permissions, and then I'll automatically add you to the admin group, right? Doesn't that just seem like this needs to exist? Obviously, I think it's going to make platform teams so much more powerful, and yeah, I'm just really excited about it. I spend more time pitching Abby's company than I do my own. Your platform team should not be spending time, I've been talking about what they should not be spending time on a lot, but what they do need to be spending a lot of time on is this kind of stuff. This is a product team. They don't own a giant, product, a giant code repo product, but they own the architecture as a product. And this is why I feel like, those of us in infrastructure who have never really learned to work like a product, with product managers and designers and all this stuff, I think the best thing you can do for your career for the next 5 to 10 years is to learn that skill now. I deeply regret not spending more time doing that myself. I think it's super important. I think it's the next logical stage of evolution after you dig yourself out of the constant firefighting and reactiveness. You get out of that situation, and you start planning ahead and everything. And we've got to act more like product teams. I think it's super inevitable and good. Also, cost. I think this is another thing that we've forgotten during the Roaring '20s, is that cost is an essential, indistinguishable part of architecture at all times. This is, again, part of what makes platform engineering such a high leverage role. It's choosing and evaluating vendors, writing libraries, helpers, and this is definitely one of those places where I just did this webinar with Corey Quinn a couple of weeks ago. I think it's up on the website. But all we talked about was like AWS bills and like the stages of grief as you grow up, and like how much of it is just looking at the bill every month, forcing yourself to look at it, tagging the resources, understanding where they go, and not letting yourself like drift into this place where nobody's looked at it in 6 months and oh shit, you're spending $1 million a month. You don't have that money. Cost is an essential part of architecture. Where you're sending your traffic across regions matters. All right, I'm not going to get into that because I'm running out of time. But like, cost is an essential part of architecture. Teaching engineers to work this way and have these instincts again is huge. Build versus buy is the time we're used to thinking about this, but it's not the only time that it's relevant, right? That's a point-in-time decision that we make once in a while. Spinning up instances and resources is something we do constantly. So what was that? I think I did the platform engineering. Yeah, so way too many teams are doing this thing where they read Hacker News, they know all these things about technology, they've got a new platform team, so they spin up this wonderful stack with like containers and schedulers and like all this cool stuff, and then it's like tumbleweeds. Hey guys, use this stuff. They're not gonna come. They're not going to come. This is where operating like a product org is so essential. If you work at a Facebook or a Google, to some extent, yes, managers will lean on you and force you to use something. Even then, it only has partial results. You really, if you don't want your effort to be wasted, and none of us do, you need to start with discovery. You need to start by finding what is the most important, what is the biggest source of pain, and how can I fix it? I am almost done here. Couple final points. Vendor engineering is a huge share of any platform team's mission. I feel like this, the engineer who I most worship in the world, my Lord and Savior, Mark Callahan, is basically a vendor engineer. He's the guy at Facebook who runs the databases. They created Level 9 for him. He also wrote that. So funny story. When I did my first big database upgrade back in like 2007 or 8 or something, my MySQL thing, where I had to like take an entire year and write this capture replay, like load testing harness thing, and then there are these InnoDB like patches from Google that you apply to your MySQL build, and it parallelizes CPU and stuff. And he wrote those. He's just like the most amazing person in the world. He basically works as he is also the reason I believe that MongoDB got to IPO, because he leaned on them. He was like, you have to have a pluggable storage engine. And then he introduced them to Wired Tiger. He's just so cool. It's an incredibly powerful place to sit, because you're leveraging, tens of millions of dollars of resources for your monthly bill. And if you can build a good relationship with your vendors and they listen to you, you get to have influence over their roadmap and their plans. And if you have good things to say, it's just super mutually beneficial. This one, I already talked about. So did that one. I guess I talked about that too. Yeah, this is kind of the natural end state of the post-firefighting SRE team. This is your reward. But like, we should approach this world with confidence and self-assurance. Like, this is, DevOps is dead. Like, fuck you, seriously. But sorry. In some ways, it's like, I don't know. Never mind. I'm not gonna say that. Too many swear words. Sorry, it's really early for me, you all. Um, DevOps may or may not die, but your skills are so valuable. Your skills are necessary. Your skills can no longer be combined to just like part of the organization. And I feel like, you know, we basically have like two career choices. We can either, if we love infrastructure, we can go work on a product that's like solving an infrastructure problem for the world, like a category problem. That's the infrastructure play. Or if you love operating software, you can go be an SRE or platform engineering engineer or something at a company that builds a product. And if you're an SRE, or I don't know if they call them DevOps team, I can't make myself say that phrase. But like your role is kind of to be like a consultant. Your role is no longer to be like cannon fodder, right? It's not on you to like get all the pages and like escalate to an engineer. No. They're their own cannon fodder now. But they need you. They need you in order to do it well and to do it sustainably. They need all the things that we know in order for that job to be worth doing. So, in conclusion, hardest part of software is operating it. Always has been. Always will be. Wait, platform engineering is just ops? No, that is also bullshit. In conclusion, computers are terrible. We all know this. Everything dies, and have fun.